Yes, I hope you can hear me. Dear Mr. Klitschko, dear friends and colleagues, thank you for inviting me to this forum, which brings together so many organizations and individuals interested in seeing Ukraine revived and thriving again. I speak today on behalf of the European Committee of the Regions. We are the political assembly gathering more than 300 of local and regional politicians from all across the European Union. The Committee of the Region has a long history of supporting Ukrainian partners since 2015. Through a special task force, we have been providing support and advice on the decentralization reform. It proved now that the successes of this reform made Ukrainian communities strong and resilient in front of the Russian military aggression. We admire your resolve and courage and do as much as we can and more to help Ukrainian cities and citizens resist. We understand that already today, our Ukrainian partners need to reconstruct their critical infrastructure, their schools, their hospitals, their houses. More large-scale reconstruction will be needed after the war. The European Committee of the Region considers it very important to avoid duplication of efforts among different European associations and networks of local and regional authorities. We have already started talks with our long-term partners such as Eurocities, CMR, Council of European Municipalities and Regions, the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe, the Global Covenant of Mayors. They and other EU institutions agree that such cooperation is necessary. At the last meeting of the Working Group on Ukraine on 23rd of May, we announced the intention to join our efforts under a common umbrella, the European Cities and Regions Alliance for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. It will be guided by shared principles. It will build upon existing regional development priorities and decentralization framework in Ukraine. It will hold self-government, local democracy, fight against corruption, sustainability, and climate neutrality as the cornerstones in reconstruction. It will further implement multi-level governance principles in Ukraine, and it will strive to support Ukraine to further progress on the way of European integration. Acting together in this alliance, we will call for a functional, dedicated facility in the Trust Fund for local regional partnerships, including also an investment component. We will promote an easy engagement mechanism that allow EU cities and regions to collaborate with Ukrainian counterparts in the reconstruction efforts. Once launched, tentatively by the end of June, we will cooperate to achieve Build Back Better principle to ensure results-oriented cooperation, anticipating green and digital transition. I hope that this will become a good start for an efficient cooperation in which the Ukrainian mayors and regional councils will have full ownership and which will pave the way to Ukrainian becoming a full-fledged member of the European EU family. I wish you a good continuation of the forum and hope to hear new ideas about rebuilding Ukraine together. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very much, and we hope that we'll be able to fully implement this umbrella that will help transparent cooperation between Ukrainian and European communities. Now, let me also ask our assistants to invite someone who had helped a lot Ukraine regain its independence, not collapse of the Soviet Union, though essentially it was the same. He was a member of
Het hele filmpje of de foto? Een foto? Ja, misschien een foto.
Sorry. We can hear someone who was a member of the Estonian parliament over 10 years. Well, he, Gyula Vohland, whom we have been working with for years now on inter alia, building a transparent system in Ukraine that'll help those who are staying abroad to return and join in the Ukraine's recovery. Friends, heroes, and I refer to all Ukrainians who fight for independence of their country. They are all heroes. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part in the discussion of our very crucial issue, in particular at the level of local government, self-government. The quality of solutions mean a lot. How can you put effort into implementing poor decisions? Therefore, it is essential that draft decisions are acceptable by the people and that as many people can, as a matter of fact, have ownership in making this decision as co-authors of this decision. So it is important to join at this early stage rather than at implementation. In Russian, they say, take decision. Yes, some decisions have to be taken, accepted, so to speak, and carried out, fulfilled, and reported on. That's important for sure, but today we'll be discussing something else. We'll be discussing how decisions should be made and be responsible for the implementation, accountable for the implementation of those decisions. We believe it is important to do that based on some models, maybe graphical models. Otherwise, it is difficult to consider these decisions as a problem. So I'll take maybe a couple of minutes to define a problem. Well, the word problem, you can hear it everywhere, every time. In Estonia, at least, very few ever try to define a problem. I will use this flip chart. So if a problem is looked at statically at any given point of time, we have to be able to identify as many aspects as we can. So all the characteristics of a phenomenon need to be identified. To this end, as experts, we can consider ways in which we join different points to take a snapshot of the, so to speak, situation. Next, we try and find out how it should be. And this contradiction between what we need and what we have is itself a problem. That is to say, this contradiction is a problem. Once it's done, we have to understand what creates this difference, and then we have to design a system of measures that would help us reduce, if not totally eliminate, the causes of these contradictions.
Dynamically, in this process, this would look the same way. There will be certain stages, certain transitions, and the entity that is making these decisions has to view this as a process. The process will be going on, and the decision maker has to have an idea how it should go on. And the contradiction between how it should be and how it actually is explains our attitude. If we don't care, then there's no problem. If we don't know how it is, there's no problem. If we don't know how it should be, there is no problem. But if all these three prerequisites are there, then we identify the problem, identify reasons, and develop the system of measures to eliminate or reduce or mitigate the reasons behind this contradiction. This requires qualification, obviously. The unity of actions, of being informed, being educated, and being experienced. Without the experience, information doesn't have enough importance. Also, education doesn't have enough value if the person or the community, for example, is not informed enough and does not have its own experience. It is not possible to exchange experience. Experience can only be gained, and it can only be generated. Experience can only be generated in actual activities, not through games or actions. Of course, besides that, besides qualification, the proper orientation is necessary. What is the point of qualification if we don't have the right direction, if we're running well, but in the wrong direction? And the search for this proper orientation is necessary. And it's equally important with qualification. And furthermore, we need motivation. If qualification is high, orientation is right, but people are too lazy, are unwilling to do so. They want to sit around and see, take a rest, something like that. People do not apply their knowledge, their efforts, but they're just looking from the side, even though their qualification is high and orientation is proper, but a person is not doing anything about this. In that case, we can emphasize that we can only achieve success if the qualification is high, the orientation is proper, and motivation is high as well. This is the most valuable thing. Because we may be doing one thing and we need another thing. And what we may need would be the unavailable thing, but something that can only be generated if we are thinking enough and if we are thinking in the right direction. Then I will elaborate on the decision-making process. I'll draw this arrow that will characterize this process. What does this depend upon? It depends upon a number of circumstances. I sometimes ask my students, do you need education? And they're telling me, yeah, sure, but not really. What we need is being informed, being educated about a certain point. It's not about a degree. It's about being educated in the subject matter we need at this point. We need to be able to understand the system, interconnections, interrelations between this, the complexities, the reasons behind these complexities. So, education. Do we need information? No, we need to be informed in this particular subject. We need to be informed. Plus, we need experience. It's not just these three individual elements that are necessary. We need their unity. On the other hand, we need to have rights, duties, and responsibility. And again, these should not be standalone elements, but they should be united. There should be a unity of these elements. If any one of them is unavailable, is non-existent, others do not make sense. Same thing goes here. So the approach has to be systemic, and the system has to be effective. And non-systemic solutions are weak solutions, bad solutions.
Конечно же, требуются также цели.
Besides that, we need goals to achieve this. Activity is not the goal itself. The goal is what we want to achieve thanks to this activity. We may set goals, but in order to achieve goals, we need the means to achieve the goal. We need means to achieve goals. And if the goal is bad, then what's the point of the whole thing? Thirdly, we need principles. Principles according to which we are maintaining this. So the system-oriented principle, humanity, connections with culture, with society, with nature, with community, with family. All these connections are necessary. And they give sense to all of this. And now this whole process, I will outline it in red. This process can only happen in the situation of the freedom of choice. The 4 points of the freedom of choice. When the subject feels there is a freedom of choice, when the person has freedom and independence, has at least one alternative, at least two more or less equal options. There's advantages and disadvantages in each of them, and only then you need to think. Otherwise, there's nothing to think about. Otherwise, this is the situation of enforcement. There's nothing to decide. Things only have to be implemented. And in the case of the freedom of choice, there have to be alternatives, and the entity should be able to add the alternative, to add oneself to the system, for instance. And they have to understand the importance of this. There is no mistake that can be made. The answers have to be provided. And responsibility is always there. And consequences, of course. Nobody wanted this, but they are shaping up. Consequences will have to be compulsory. There will definitely be consequences. We hope to obtain results, but consequences will happen anyway. So we have to set barriers to make sure consequences are not as heavy as they could be. Plus, we may have to build certain compensatory mechanisms. During the war, there will be consequences. There will definitely be consequences. We want to achieve results. We're achieving results, but consequences may happen. And we need to take care of both of them. And already here, not when they've already fruited. Thank you for your attention. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you very much, Yulo. This was a very brief lesson in how many things we need to make at least one decision. That was very cool. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to hear you. Now we'd like to give floor to Secretary General of the World Situation, United Cities and Local Governments, Emilia Sais. She will be connected online, and we hope to see her shortly.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. The heart of the worldwide municipal movement is with you. And on behalf of United Cities and Local Governments, its 150,000 members around the world and its leadership, we extend you the warmest greetings and our hopes for a very soon pacification and rebuilding with all the force and glory of Ukraine. I wanted to share with you that we are ready to listen to the needs of the Ukrainian cities of our membership and to organize solidarity through our network. In collaboration with our regional section in Europe, CEMR, I greet my colleague, the Secretary General, Fabrizio Rossi, who is with you there. We are very open to explore what kind of support we can provide. And we think it is important to ensure that support is also provided to the association. The association needs to guarantee that there is a capacity building that is spread out, that there is a continuity of governance, and that our values and principles are respected. So we look forward to contributing to you, to also amalgamizing all the solidarity that has been expressed throughout our world organization to support cities in surrounding neighborhood countries, welcome refugees, but above all, to think about how to rebuild Ukraine and how to ensure that democracy and local self-government prevails there to comply with the needs of the citizens in terms of service provision. You have our unwavering support, our solidarity as a world organization, and our commitment to defend the rule of law, to defend complying with international agreements and our standfast approach to peace against invasion and against war. So we are listening and look forward to structure help in the coming period in collaboration with the association and with our regional section in Europe. We are at your service. Long live Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Дуже дякуємо, пані Емілія, яка представляла...
Thank you very much, Emilia, for the representation of the organization, which is the biggest association of local authorities in the world, which is present in 7 regions of the world. Now I'd like to move on to Ukraine and would ask to connect Vitaly Bezgin, a member of parliament, who is one of the most active local government MPs in the parliament, chief of the Committee of Administrative and Territorial Establishment, Regional Development and City Building. Vitaly, all matters related to self-government He is working on this with us, with Association of Cities of Ukraine, and I hope that we will also have strong cooperation in rebuilding the Ukrainian communities. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome you at your event. I'm sorry I am on business leave, so I cannot be with you physically. But first of all, I'd like to thank all the representatives of the local government in Ukraine who are working together and who are fighting the occupying forces together with the armed forces. So you bear a huge burden, a huge load on your shoulders because you're maintaining the life of our communities. And whatever the central government does, you are the closest to the people and you bear the brunt of all the problems and all the pain that our citizens are facing. Some of you are working directly on the front, some are on the support territories, some are working in the rear, but you're facing the kind of challenges that Ukraine has not faced before. And I hope that the work we've been doing when we were adopting draft law 3162, when we were regulating the self-government during the state of war, we realized that a long period of reconstruction will follow in all territories of Ukraine because the war has set a lot of challenges as to the development of communities. The new legislation has to be the foundation on state and regional policy. But there is a certain concern because there have to be certain parameters as to certain groups of territories that have been affected directly by the war and all others. We hope to adopt this draft law shortly and then take it through the parliament. As to the other things, I think the focus of our priorities has to be based on tax decentralization. Finally, I am convinced that now is the time when the central government has a lot of other problems, but local governments have to have the opportunity to administer local taxes. I think it's extremely important. It's part of the reform in local government and decentralization, and we hope we will be able to advocate the success in this area. Of course, we also need to regulate other things in the points of contact of state and local governments, because there is a time for everything. Now we need to focus on effectiveness, on the ability to fill the local budgets, and on synchronization of efforts so that our efforts were coordinated and well targeted. I'm open to initiatives that you are prepared to prepare and advocate, and we can move forward in this aspect. So the law on the foundations of state and regional policy and the policy of rebuilding comes first, then general pressure, public pressure on the tax administration. This is the key thing that we need to do together. In all other things, and I don't think any other titanic changes in local government are appropriate right now. As to the adjustment of administrative and territorial organization, particularly in the affected areas, I think we can go back to this matter after the active hostilities stop and when forced IDPs can move back, except for the territories where there's nowhere to return. So I hope that in this part, before the end of 2022, we will have a common methodology as to how these things need to be adjusted so that every territory could respond to challenges in the future. And economic challenges, in principle, have to play the key role. Thank you very much again for everything you're doing. I'm always open. And I hope that international partners would also not leave Ukraine in its bad times and can help them as brothers in arms. And we can make it happen because we're protecting the democratic world. One of the key solutions that we can see is the needs to support Ukraine as a EU candidate, and then we will receive another signal to implement all legislation and integrate all legislation in local government with the best European practices. I hope this happens. Ukraine has a lot to be proud of, but together we can make it even better. Thank you very much, Vitaly. And today we're fighting for this. So we are working together to rebuild the country, to make sure we don't lose time, so precious for all of us.
The next to speak is one of our partners, European partners, the person that represents Romanian Association, that's Association of Municipalities, the president of Romanian Association of Municipalities, Mayor of Cluj-Napoca. He was with us from the very first hours of the war waged by Russian Federation, and he does a fantastic job to help us, to help Ukraine. Welcome, over to you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great honor and pleasure to be together. And from the very beginning, I'd like to express our solidarity and support for the Ukrainian people. Your war, it's our war, because we are fighting for the same values. And we have 3 months of war, unfortunately, but we have 3 months of fabulous unity in Europe to support Ukraine. Why? Because our people all over Europe thinks that your cause is right, you are on the right side of the history, Putin is on the wrong side of the history, and his approach should be defeated. So, speaking on behalf of Romanian Association of Municipalities, on behalf of my city, Cluj-Napoca, from the very heart of Transylvania, I want to tell you that it's a fantastic enthusiasm of our people to support Ukrainian refugees in our country. We have in Cluj a lot of civil organizations supporting Ukrainian refugees, starting with Romanian Institute for Peace, Patri, Kai, thank you so much, and other organizations from the national level. We have already in the educational system almost 3,000 Ukrainian children going to school, studying in Ukrainian, in Romanian, and in English, try to allow them not to lose the education component, besides all other helps. On the level of support, we took the decision to encourage our cities to do a sister city partnership with cities from Ukraine. Myself, as a mayor, I have one sister city partnership with Chernivtsi, and we already help another 4 cities and regions, besides 3 local authorities from Moldova. And now we are preparing to do more. So my point is not to wait the end of the war in order to rebuild infrastructure in Ukraine. You have to do now, because we as a mayor, we know very quick how important it's a quick response, because the winter is coming, not far away from now on. People need heating, water, basic facilities. So we need to help the Ukrainian authorities, local authorities, to deal with the basic infrastructure, schools, water supply, heating, what is necessary from the very first moment, now, not later. The second component is to work on infrastructure. There are bridges which have been destroyed. There are schools, kindergartens, hospitals. So if one sister city is helping another sister city to build up a new school or a new kindergarten or a new bridge, we have to do now. And we have the willingness, capability, and the resources to help the Ukrainian authorities using our bilateral mechanism in order to work together. So, for example, in terms of critical infrastructure, I'm preparing to send 3 to 5 trolley buses to one of our sister city to help with the public transport, because they need now public transport to be solved in this very moment. So I do support so much a concrete response and support even now. Of course, on mid and long term, we are preparing to help Ukraine to rebuild their country. not on Soviet style, as well our country, Romania, during the communist times, but to rebuild in more green, resilient, of course, with the respect for Ukrainian tradition, architectural vision of the Ukrainian people. But we are prepared on larger scale to help Ukraine because you are part of our European family, because you are fight-proof, because you are in the very heart of the European Union in terms of values. So you can count also as a Romanian mayor, as a member of the European Committee of the Regions, on our support you to become a member of the European Union together with Moldova and Georgia. And I have been yesterday on Rotterdam on the Congress of EPP, and there was a resolution of support, the most important European party from Europe, to support you to become a member of the European Union according with the legal procedure, because that's the future of Ukraine. And we need now a strategic defeat of Russia. What does it mean, strategic defeat of Russia? Means that Russia should be defeated in order not to be able again to attack another country like Ukraine. And it should be a lesson for any authoritarian regimes that we cannot deal with such an attitude which belongs to the last century, not to the present century we live. Europe cannot accept. When we say never again, we really mean never again. And the Ukrainian people proves to be so brave in order to defend their country, to defend our values, and to defend in the end our common democracy. So we need a strategic defeat of Russia, and we stand with you up to the end to do that and to be successful. And I want also to emphasize that it's important to have a victory. But by victory, I understand what Ukraine means victory. And what Ukraine means victory should be the same meaning for United States or the European Union. Your meaning of victory should be the meaning for all of us, because that means exactly what Europe should do in order to support you. So I will close my intervention because there are so many colleagues to be present. My message is very strong. Count on us, on the Romanian Association of Municipalities, for bilateral support on sister cities. I do strongly recommend all the sister cities in Europe to help Ukrainian municipalities, and also offer us, request us what you need, because we are ready to stand with you and to support on any manner, on any matters you need it, starting with the critical infrastructure right now up to a long process of reconstruction, which you are entitled to do it. Thank you for the opportunity, and again, congratulations for your fight, because we do feel the same thing, and you are a brave European, and we are proud to be together in this fight and to defeat forever the authoritarianism and to send him back in the history where the place it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Дуже вам дякую, пане Емілю.
Thank you, Emil. As the person that has Chernivtsi as hometown, I know how Suchayev supports Ukrainians. That's the Romanian town just across the border. I know how much of humanitarian assistance is coming to Ukraine. I know how sincere you are in your support provided to us. You are doing everything for us to prevail, and for us to be able to effectively recover Ukraine after the war. We would strongly encourage you to support us in recognizing Ukraine as the candidate for EU membership. That's critically important for us in every aspect, including post-war recovery. Thanks a lot. We do appreciate it. We do appreciate Romanian municipalities' assistance provided to us. Let me give the floor now to the president of the Association of Architects in Ukraine. That's one of the oldest associations, I would say, in our country. They say that they have been operating starting 1918. That's more than 100 years ago when they were established. So our respect to all of you. We have also more than 3,000 of architects that association unites. So given all this, we do hope that there's a huge potential and opportunities for recovery in Ukraine through your efforts with engagement of the most reputable international architects will recover and will rebuild our country. Over to you, please.
Мене щиро схвилювало ряд виступів.
I was really touched by a number of speeches made before me, but one thing that I would like to underscore, that's the speech of Konovalenko from Polohe. A year ago, in June 2020, my colleagues from Zaporizhia Association of Architects went to Polohe to have an event in their common center, community center rather, where we had 100 representatives, experts on land issue and then urban development and other things. And we were talking about spatial planning then. And it's really sad to realize that this wonderful town is besieged at the moment, is under occupation. You know, before the war, the entire media space was full of messages that the most successful reform is decentralization reform. When the war was waged by Russia, we got convinced about that as citizens of different cities, towns, and villages. We are stopping the enemy with no arms in their hands, just waving the national flag. And we know why it is happening, because administrative territorial reform or decentralization reform, as we call it, it showed to people in Ukraine that they are in the center in this country, that the communities they live in are their communities. So the person was in the center of decisions made by authorities. And the country started developing a favorable environment for people, and that's what we architects talk about. And different decisions were made to make this happen. Spatial planning is helping to do that. In 2020, on the basis of the experience that we acquired from Europe, councillors as well as architects, representatives of the Association of Architects, drafted and adopted the law on amendments to the laws of Ukraine on planning and using lands. By this law, we've introduced a development of the comprehensive plan for the territorial community development and documents for the land use and design and planning to be developed by the communities in their development to attract investments and improve investment climate and for decision-making process. In this slide, well, that's the first busy slide. but they are much simpler than the speaker from Estonia showed. Just the visualization of the plan to show you that it covers all the elements when it comes to documents to be developed by the communities for their development. We have a very simple visualization to tell you how the comprehensive spatial development plan is linked to the document that I referred to. And that strategy of economic development and the concept of integrated development and analysis that is included in these documents. If you simplify it, then the strategy determines what is needed. Financial resources available for you will tell you when you can do that, and the strategy will tell you how far you can go and what you can achieve. Talking about types of communities, I would say that we have two of them. Most of the communities have a larger geographic space. For instance, Poltava had 55 settlements joining the city to shape the present community. So the challenges they faced was how to make it homogeneous, how the city can cope with this, how people of the most remote village, Zinkivka district, will feel that the mayor is their mayor. And there is a huge room for various interventions here. And again, based on the visualization, you see the first draft that we had on Poltava region, and that which is the beginning of the work that we did. GIZ funded this project. That's the system of education that you have reflected on this side, and you see how independent it is. It is not linked to the system of education in the city at all. If you look at this slide, the situation here is completely different. With the work that we encompassed, we covered all security centers. And if you look at these centers, they are mainly located in Poltava only. And in the cities, when it comes, for instance, for firefighting centers, there is almost nothing in some remote districts. So we need to work on that too. Let's take another look. That's Kiev. That's Kharkiv. That's very typical slide for large cities. If it is a large city that exists within the boundaries it used to exist before, it borders on the other communities that are specific. They are focused on being close to the giant city next to them, and they seem to be kind of, subordinate to the large city because they need to find common interests, to cooperate. And that's another project that we developed for a Gany community. There are 2 towns and 5 villages there. And that's the community that borders on Kharkiv in the south. So this type of coexistence is really interesting to look at. It was an interesting project that we developed, and unfortunately this community was affected. There is a heavy destruction and there are fatalities there, and some of the experts we cooperated with there died too. Well, in these projects, we took into consideration all elements, including environmental aspect, which is very important. So there are several types of communities. So that's the communities that either have to learn how to coexist and cooperate with other communities, or to live in one harmonious unity inside the other communities. So these are 2 major types that we are dealing with at the moment. Before the war, thanks to the funding, and that was technical assistance provided by different countries, around 40 communities developed their plans of development. They used their local funding as well. For instance, in Koblevo, most of the plans were developed, that's center, south, had their plans, but they are so heavily affected by the war that these plans require serious adjustments. Anyways, they are going to stay as a roadmap for the post-war development. So comprehensive plan of community development de facto is an electronic system, an information system where construction, land issues, cadastre, everything is accumulated and collected there. This allows to use modern approaches to the decision-making process, as Estonia colleague was saying, to use land properly and do it in a very modern, transparent manner, thus providing high quality modern services to people. So an important aspect here is the systems that are used in the work, and we needed to have professionals trained in applying these systems so that they are used the most efficiently in the interest of the amalgamated or just in the interest of the communities. Thanks for your attention, and glory to Ukraine.
Дякую дуже, пане Олександре.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I'm sure that the architects of Ukraine will be able to build and design and shape the future of Ukraine. And I'd like to remind of Ms. Rud's quote, who said that our new Ukraine will be the way we will be. So we will change ourselves and we'll change the architecture of Ukraine. Now I'd like to pass the floor to the representative of business, because we can't go away from business just like business won't go away from communities. And it was a pleasure to hear how the mayors were telling about the situation in their communities, telling about the operation of a certain business. We have the fund. Unfortunately, the sound has dropped. Unfortunately, the speaker is muted.
have a place to go back. And there are several reasons why our fund has been successful, and hopefully we will be able to scale this. If I may ask for the presentation, that would be absolutely wonderful. So the Soborna Ukraine Foundation was formed on the initiative of the CEO Club Ukraine. And this is an initiative that brings together over 200 people who are owners and CEOs of middle and big businesses in Ukraine, who are not only there to make profit, but also to make an impact. And it is very important that businesses in Ukraine are socially responsible. They do not only care about making money, but they also want to be there for their local communities. They want to be there to overcome all of the struggles that we are facing there. When the full-scale invasion of Russia started, the CEO Club Foundation raised about 100 million hryvnias to be funded by military organizations, to be aimed at military purposes. And then it became clear that not only we can raise money inside of Ukraine, inside of the members of the CEO Club Foundation, but it is so much more important to go abroad with that. There are several reasons that communities and funds like ours are more preferable to donate to. There are lots of people in the world who are supporting Ukraine, and now you do not have to be Ukrainian to support Ukraine, but you have to be a human in order to support Ukraine. There are lots of people worldwide in the United States and Europe who want to support Ukraine and who want to show their support. But when they are asked what exactly they can do in order to support, there are several obstacles to do that. Number one is that there are so many funds that are huge institutions like UNICEF, like Red Cross. And unfortunately, they are not concentrated on Ukraine only. Unfortunately, they have so many different vectors, and you cannot guarantee that they are going to support what is happening exactly in Ukraine. And mostly they aim their funds to support refugees in other countries. Secondly, it is very important that we have an office in Ukraine to make sure we can gather the needs of Ukrainians on site, and we can validate those needs and be at maximum efficiency of our results. Just one example, and I'm very happy to see here the mayor of Mykolaiv, and I'm not going to go into details of the problem of water shortage in Mykolaiv, but one of the reasons, one of the solutions to do there was to dig 14 autonomous valves that are going to be located on the territory of hospitals and the territory of schools in densely populated areas of Mykolaiv, and then provides water purification systems to make sure that people have access to drinking water. And this is what we did. There are several reasons that make it possible. Number one is that as a fund that was initiated by CEO Club Ukraine that is not only in Kyiv, but has a huge network all around Ukraine, we were able to receive a direct request from the city administration, and we were able to respond to that very quickly and very urgently. And then the social capital was a huge use and help here. So we were able to quickly raise the money, launching a fundraiser, and then thanks to the effective operational system, we were able to overcome the problem quite rapidly and quite successfully. And then we are going to continue that. We are going to scale what we are doing in Ukraine by attracting funds from all over the world, all of the people who want to support Ukraine, all of the people who want to make sure that there is a place and there is a good place for Ukrainians to come back once the war is over, once we win. We are mainly concentrating on education and kids, on providing medical aid and providing critical humanitarian and civil infrastructure. One of the projects that is still here that we are going to make on a large scale is our initiative to attract graduates from world's top universities to fund renovation of schools and to make sure that our online education is so much better than it was before. It is not only important to go back to the position that we had before the 24th of February, but it is so much more important to make sure that we make a huge step forward. And when there is a problem, there is always a possibility. And we believe that Ukraine has all the power to turn this war into a possibility to grow better, to grow faster, and to prove to the whole world that we are there, we are resilient, and we are here for a long time fighting for democracy and establishing the best values that you might have. I also want to pay special attention to the fact that we have been able to bring together not only people inside Ukraine, not only all the communities are collaborating in the most efficient ways, but the whole of world is supporting Ukraine. The whole world is organized and unanimous in their decisions. It is for the first time that the European Union has been almost unanimous in their decisions. It is the first time that we see such thing as collective trust that has not been there since the World War II. And this is a huge sign that so many people, world prominent leaders and thinkers such as Francis Fukuyama are on the advisory board of our fund. And we are looking very much forward to bring into action not those projects that are aimed to just overcome the struggle, but to make sure that the war is over, that Ukraine wins, and we will be able to launch some more peaceful projects and make sure Ukraine prospers in the best way that it is possible. And I thank you all so much.
Дякую дуже, Арзі.
Thank you, Arzi. Thank you very much. We're doing this work ourselves. No one's going to do it for us. It's very important that our Ukrainian business understands this and works with communities. The communities, the business are doing that. And now I'd like to give floor to our partners, our colleagues who are working in parallel with Association of the Cities of Ukraine in Norway, Norwegian Association of Local and Territorial Authorities. This is the association that already helps the Association of Cities of Ukraine. The country has already stated its readiness to help at the level of communities to renovate and reestablish our towns, cities, and townships and villages. So I'm very happy to give floor and to Kul Maria Helgesen, President of the Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Associations.
To address participants of this important forum, Revive Ukraine and Revive Communities. Our experience in Norway is that local and regional governments play a crucial role to tackle crises at a strategic and operational level, provide ordinary public services, and maintain a high level of trust. We have more than 10 years of cooperation with Association of Ukrainian Cities, supporting decentralization and good governance. We believe that the comprehensive decentralization reform with significant resources and many new tasks transferred from the center to local level, as well as the high level of trust in local governments, have contributed to the strong local mobilization we see today in Ukraine. And during the war, local authorities also gained invaluable experience in solving infrastructure, social and economic problems, and this is necessary for the future restoration of cities. Therefore, the ownership of restored country should belong to people and municipalities, and not just to state, certain politicians, and international organizations. The post-war period risks may include the restriction of decentralization for the sake of quick solutions. While quick actions are proven efficient, and the attempt to narrow the role of municipalities in the restoration process would be a big mistake. We hope that Ukraine and all international community will avoid it. I would like to emphasize two important elements for the future. Make sure you have vital local democracies with a high degree on local self-government, because it will improve adaptability, accountability, and responsiveness. And in times of crisis, don't re-centralize power more than absolutely necessary. And if you do, make sure it is temporary. Second, across the national borders, support international municipal cooperation. Local governments' definite advantage in the field of international cooperation is that wherever you are in the world, our mandate from the people and national government is quite similar. Therefore, it is easy for municipalities to relate with each other. They have relevant exchange of experiences and fruitful development of ideas. Strong local democracy is a prerequisite for a strong, good national democracy. KS and Norwegian municipalities are ready for their cooperation and support Ukrainian municipalities in their important work. I wish you all the best in these very important and terrible times for you.
Дуже дякуємо Норвезькій асоціації.
We'd like to thank the Norwegian Association of the local authorities. And now I would like to return to Ukraine again, and I would like to connect Mayor of Slavutich Town Council, Mr. Yuri Fomichev, who is not just a city mayor. He underwent training at some point. He probably knew something. He took the training in the US on Marshall Plan, on construction management. So he must have known something. Yuri, maybe you could tell us how you see the rebuilding of Ukraine according to the Marshall Plan. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak here. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our national and international partners and associations beyond Ukraine, the association within Ukraine, because all horizontal connections have really worked when times were really hard. Today, Ukraine faces colossal challenges, and they're different in different communities. Some communities were occupied and have been liberated by now. Some are hosting a lot of IDPs, and they have to somehow handle the infrastructural challenges. Many communities are occupied today. In some of them, heavy fighting is ongoing, and it will be very hard for us to overcome these challenges on our own. But we'd like to say that over these past 3 months of full-scale invasion, we felt the support of international institutions at different levels, starting from the partner cities who did not stand aside our problems, who did not stand aloof, all the way through to the international institutions. And Slavutich has always been active in this process. We've been thinking a lot about, we always joined such initiatives. We were one of the first to join them in many cities. GIZ, NEFCO, the European Union, they have all responded to our problems and helped us when things were hard. But in the future, we'd like to strengthen this cooperation, because what Ukraine has today, particularly in the deoccupied territories and the territories that will be deoccupied, all of that requires a lot of your attention. If we speak about different infrastructure, differently ruined. Some communities have lost social infrastructure, engineering infrastructure. Some have lost housing. But we all know that pretty much all of the deoccupied territories have lost their transport infrastructure. First of all, because destroyed bridges. We took this photo for a reason, because it's part of our security. But this is the bridge that was taking us to Chernobyl and BP. We are the satellite town of Chernobyl and BP that has been occupied and captured from the very first day. And this bridge was there no more since the very first day of the occupation. Similarly, there was no railway bridge that was also destroyed, and this was the shortest path towards Chernobyl and BP for our staff. So they were able to travel to work in 50 minutes. But starting from the 24th of February, part of the people who were there stayed in their workplaces for a month. And they were only able to partly be replaced on the 20th of March. And this logistics is not rebuilt, and it will not be rebuilt for technical reasons. Technically, this is hard. But on top of that, this will not be rebuilt for security and political reasons, because that path led through Belarus, and Belarus is supporting the occupiers now from their territory. It is from their territory that the occupiers went towards Kyiv and Chernihiv. Missiles went through there. Slavodich is 12 kilometers away from the border. Now, next slide, please. The personnel is traveling for 8 hours to be replaced at the station. And this is a very uncomfortable road, 350 kilometers of travel. And then live in the conditions like you see here. We have changed to work in shifts. When we were similar to what we were doing in 1986-87, when we were overcoming the fallout of Chernobyl accident, disaster, when people were staying at work for 15 days to be replaced further.
What shall we do to make sure that logistics, if not restored, at least improved? We need to find the roads, highways for the vehicles to be used. If you look at the map, then to get to nuclear plant from Slavodich, you need to go to via Chernigov, Vyshgorod. So that's kind of, pink line. If we have convenient logistics, then that's going to be double better than the one that we have now. But to make this happen, we need to implement a very simple project for Ukraine, and that's about future, about the way Ukraine should look like after we prevail. And we are sure to prevail, because with partners and friends like you are, we will prevail. But after the victory, Ukraine should be different. So logistics that I am talking about is going to give impetus for our development. We want to have the ferry crossing via the river, across the river, that will allow to build the road not through the Kyiv, but by passing it. We have been cooperating with the BRD on this project. They got engaged in discussing this project. We started doing that when we worked on the Chernobyl shelter project. But that's the project that we need. And getting back to Marshall Plan and the education that I got in the United States of America. So I would like to say that Ukraine needs this Marshall Plan, and Ukraine is ready for the plan, ready to become a new country, a different country. But to make this happen, we need to be a full-fledged member of the European family, the EU. Today, we are talking about the EU candidate status for Ukraine, and I would like to encourage all the institutions that we've been cooperating and those who are present here today, please support us on this path. Please be the ambassadors of Ukraine in this process, and we proved that we can be partners on our end. Talking about the challenges that we are facing as the territory close to the border, that's something that provides for the involvement of international institutions as well. After the occupation, Slavodich remained more or less undestroyed. We still have the infrastructure, so we were able to relocate business from Mariupol. That was a small business to produce food. They were ready to get relocated, and they have a USAID project that they jointly implement. And in autumn, they were supposed to receive the grant to procure equipment. We provided a lot of support to them, saying that we are ready to host them here, ready to cooperate. We are ready to provide all the local preferences. But instead, we received the response from the USAID saying that funding of the projects that are located more than 100 kilometers away from the border with Russia is not going to be funded by them. And that's another challenge that we are facing now. And here I would like to address all our partners. Let's find a way out of this situation. Let's find the solution to this. On the one hand, we local authorities would like to give preferences for the relocated businesses. We have experience of that after the disaster at the nuclear plant. We had the period of 5 years, and we developed these mechanisms. We created 5,000 jobs and attracted around 5 million of investments. But the most important thing is the tax proceeds. They were 4 times higher than the preferences that were given to them initially. So that's beneficial for us. But the security element is coming to the forefront. Who would guarantee the compensations that will be paid to businesses on these territories? And we need the support of international companies, international insurance companies to help us on that. Ukrainian companies are not ready to do that, but maybe through joint efforts, we'll be able to provide these guarantees to businesses that work close to the border so that these areas will remain economically active and will not be turned into the gray zone. Along with that, all the events that we see developing and happening give unprecedented decisions that didn't exist before February 24. One of them is here, that's intercity train that we see connecting Slavutych with Kiev. That's a regional train yet, but shortly we are hoping for having intercity operating in Slavutych as well. From my first day, and that was 7 years ago, we kept talking that Chernihiv should be connected with Slavutych with intercity high-speed trains. So we need to take this opportunity and make it happen. Another important thing is a Chernobyl zone, despite the fact that it is far away from us, but Slavutych is the town where people that work in at Chernobyl plant live. They know what's happening there. And again, we encourage international partners, and we have been cooperating with partners from Japan, namely that's establishing scientific hub that would deal with Chernobyl nuclear plant, and this should be created in the safe place. Slavutych remains the place where we keep a historic memory of Chernobyl disaster. We do understand that in the near future, tourism to Chernobyl is unlikely to take place. We are ready to offer Slavutych as the place where the memory is preserved so that the effects, repercussions of Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster will stay there. And today we see them differently after the nuclear power plant was captured by Russians. So these issues got a different dimension. That's the issues we focus on at the moment. Again, I'm grateful to international partners and Association of Ukrainian Cities for all this support that you grant to us, for everything you are doing in these difficult times. And I'm sure that through joint efforts, we'll build new Ukraine. We deserve that. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the armed forces of Ukraine. Thank you, Yuri. Indeed. Well, you can tell that you are a fellow of Marshall Plan program. You have the strategy of post-war recovery, and it's nice to hear that from you. Let me give the floor to the person who would cover strategies from the other aspect. That's Madam Curie, so the deputy chair of the Association of Architects in Ukraine. Architects keep uniting associations, and that's a very good sign of unity. Thank you, Oksana. I am very happy to welcome all of you here in this room. I am honored to present the Association of Architects to you, to talk before the mayors and heads of the communities. Let me express my gratitude for your strength, for sincerity, for your fight, for your efforts. And thanks for being able to dream about the way your towns, villages, and cities will look like in the future. That's a strong force of being able to dream about the future. And that's what is common between you and us architects. Let's talk a little bit about the architecture of New Ukraine. How can we get there? 8 years ago, the war was waged in Ukraine. 8 years ago, we started large-scale reforms in Ukraine too. And one of the largest reforms and most successful reforms was the decentralization reform that enabled people to feel people of dignity, owners and masters of their land, with all the diversity of every town, the brightness of every town, and the force of every community. Let me show the project. That's Nova Kakhovka, Kherson Oblast, the Center for Administrative Services. That was constructed within decentralization reform project. This premises was to be a symbol of reform, a symbol of local authorities in the community. That's where we were supposed to have a friendly environment where services would be provided with respect to everybody, with respect to the time. That's the main entrance, that's the way the house looks at the sunset. So the building had ceilings 5 meters height, and every person who would walk into this building should feel proud, should feel this friendliness of the local authorities, of the government, where services provided are friendly, and that was all about democracy and about our development. This building was a symbol of modern Ukrainian society. It was supposed to be the closest to those people who stayed in the occupied Crimea. They were to come here to get the services and feel citizens of Ukraine, citizens that are taken care of, citizens that are remembered. We wanted to build it, and we did. It was launched in the autumn of 2021. We were very happy. See the picture, we were hugging with the mayor of Nova Kakhovka. It was a very wonderful event, and several months later, Nova Kakhovka was occupied. I saw how people took to the streets against Russian occupation. They were gathering at the premises at this very building that we built. I saw how people were resistant to the Russian invasion. What do we have now? We have limited resources. We see hot stage of the war. We have occupied towns, but we have strong towns that repel the enemy, that are courageous. We have strong people that defend their towns. I represent architects that act and dream. Alexei Shamatyuk is the head of Kiev organization. That's architectural chamber of the Association of Architects. Next to him is Alexei Arban. He is the painter in the alley, landscape alley that you all love so much. They joined the armed forces of Ukraine. They are fighting near Mykolaiv. Thanks for the applauses, because every time I talk about architects, I talk about the architects that can design very well. But when the time came, they took arms and defend their country. There are architects that turn their offices into headquarters for volunteers. In this picture, you see the office of Olia Kleitman, Kharkiv architect, wonderful designer, wonderful architect who stayed in the city. She decided to stay there. She didn't want to leave. She decided to stay and fight, because she said, if somebody would leave, then how would Kharkiv defend itself? So she turned her office, that's her, she turned her office into the headquarters for the volunteers, and she beautified it. That's Sargen Yar project, that's public space in the city of Kharkiv that Olga designed. Let's just take a look at this, because when designing this type of space, we keep in mind the architectural ideas that is not focused on square meters, but rather on the space that would bring people together, people who would socialize, dream, relax, where they come up with ideas, great ideas. And this type of space reinforces this network leadership, the networking, communication, links, something that cannot be killed with rockets and bombs. That's the space for free people. It looks empty now. Indeed, that's the picture from last weekend. And that's the way this place looks like. So that's near the river, and that was meant for meditation, for reflection, for creativity. That's the way to looked in peaceful times, and that's the way it is going to look like, because that's all about connections between people, about their joint work, about their thoughts, ideas, and that's not something that can be destroyed. And rocket strikes reinforce this unity, this networking that makes us stronger. At this forum, I don't have time to show these wonderful projects that were designed by our architects, but take my word on that. These projects are not about square meters, but they are about love to Ukrainian towns, about this space friendly for people that is coming from the heart. National Association of Architects unites architects that act, and those who, through their love, work, and creativity, can create this type of projects for happiness. That's the way it may look like. Today, Architectural Chamber and the National Association of Architects, we are working to create new Ukraine. We are working on important projects that include international activity, that successful cases, success stories of recovery. We keep collecting them. We are developing the vision and strategy of cities development. We are focused on good governance. We are working on fundraising projects. That's critical now. We are analyzing the needs requirements of military and civilians. We are developing lots of different projects because our task is to collect designs that could be used by others. So that's a kind of research that will be available for free people that will develop free Ukraine. We are united, capable, and we have capacity to develop modern Ukraine with Ukrainian heart, with new messages, without typical Soviet messages, without these gray and poor scenes that were typical of the Soviet times. So we've never been like that. That's why we want to create architecture with new messages, with new ideas, through joint efforts, through the support to defense. Ukraine should deliver these news messages, and the core of it is respect to the person, energy independence, accessibility, safety, security, might of the communities. That's exactly what we are based on. The idea of freedom is the basis of the new architecture, the architecture of our independence. I am here with you to offer you the capacity that we have. In this slide, you see some elements of the work we are doing. That's a manifesto, the meetings that we have, lectures, research on recovery, success stories of Warsaw, Coventry, Chernobyl. We analyze the Ukrainian experience of recovery Ukrainian cities. I'm here to offer the opportunities and capacity. We have experts, that's enormous experience of experts. We have very good international contacts. We are members of the International Union of Architects. We are members of the European Association and the Fora in Madrid. We got the confirmation of the members of the association that they're ready to cooperate with us. We can attract funding. What do we need from you? Request, because architects cannot work as the ones that would just develop standardized type of things. We are to resolve social tasks. Dear mayors, dear heads of the communities, dear leaders, please submit your requests, set tasks for us to do. We have resources. We have capacity, energy. We are people with Ukrainian heart will cope with that, will resolve these tasks with the language of architecture and creativity and love to our talents. I agree that architecture is the mirror of our society. So let's stay beautiful. And let's see beauty in this mirror, because the world that we create depends on what we are. Let's create this beauty together with love, with Ukrainian identity, with Ukrainian heart. Let's stay beautiful and let's create beauty. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the focus and messages. So, dear mayors, please find solutions jointly with architects. Let me give the floor to our partners to talk about joint solutions.
Дуже приємно зазвичай говорити і співпрацювати з тими людьми, з тими країнами, які не словом, а ділом нам сьогодні допомагають.
And it's a pleasure to cooperate with countries and people which are helping us. Lithuania is one of them. They have stood by us since the very morning of February 24, and they were doing everything to make sure we work together. Mindaugas Sinkevičius is the mayor of Ionava. He is chief of association. We're happy to hear you.
On the 24th of February, we all have witnessed a military invasion of Russia into the territory of independent and free state of Ukraine. This invasion, of course, has no legal or moral grounds, and it's absolutely based on solely criminal aspirations or some illusions of a hostile country and its leader. I believe that many citizens, including me, daily, when they wake up in the morning, during their first coffee, we tend to look at the news, latest news, and we're all in Lithuania seeking for one and only news. Maybe Putin has already died or killed himself, but we will maybe come to this point, and hope very, very fast. So, of course, Lithuanians cannot tolerate the situation, and mayors being kidnapped of Russian soldiers, children dying, and we believe and hope that this criminal adventurism of Putin's regime will fail. And of course, all democratic world has to show its unity and support for Ukraine. Lithuania, both at national level and at a level of municipalities, have constant regular contacts with their city partners in Ukraine, providing humanitarian assistance, financial assistance, and of course, helping Ukrainians that left their state to find a shelter in Lithuania. So, so I think that providing accommodation opportunities is one of the things Lithuanians have done. The very recent example is that Lithuanians, as just as ordinary citizens, in 2.5 days have gathered approximately 6 million euros to buy a new Bayraktar from Turkey to Ukraine forces. And it's today, actually, I saw in the news that we are announcing that Ukraine was so surprised that we as a nation are so united that it's planning to give it away, this Bayraktar, as a gift. So that just purely shows the unity and how we as a nation are supporting Ukrainians and Ukraine. So we do understand that war every day brings pain and despair for the people of Ukraine. And of course, it's enormous damage to the country's economy, destroying its foundations. But at the same time, and it's also a saying that there's nothing good in war. The only good in war is the end of the war. So we are actually already started talks with central government, with central parliament. How can we help at municipal level? How can we help to restore cities, to restore municipalities? How can we help Ukrainians to, with our knowledge and transferring our experiences to become a full European alliance member? So to make this accession process very easy, or at least easier. So we are in full support at both humanitarian, financial experience joining European Union level, and we will certainly do our best to help you. We're a small nation, but with a big heart. So and we do understand that the future of the world and European Union and Europe and us, of course, it's mainly now depends on Ukraine. You are fighting in your homeland for your families, but all the same at the same time for our families, and to live in a free and democratic country, to live and decide upon your future yourselves. So we are very grateful for that, and we will help you as much as we can. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you for your support. And I would like to give floor to our architects, Natalia Presukhina, who used to teach how to design investments, how can we design rebuilding. Thank you. My name is Natalia Presukhina, and I represent the School of Management of Construction Projects, ProPM, City of Kyiv. I'd like to start my presentation with an interesting yet little-known fact. 3% of all Marshall Plan was targeted at training and retraining of managers and specialists and workers. And I'm very happy to be present here at this forum today and represent the group of educators. We may call this business education, we may call this specialized education for adults, because in terms of the number of people, of adults whom we need to retrain, and this has a certain special features, this is millions and millions of people. I would like to start by saying that any project starts with the so-called lessons learned analysis. And of course, we could not avoid this with the Association of Architects of Ukraine. We are carefully studying the cases of rebuilding cities after wars and natural disasters. And we're not just preparing stories, we're preparing analytical materials and reference books that we will pass on to the Association of Cities. So that they could use these materials. So there's dozens of examples of rebuilding cities. There's an example of Coventry, of Warsaw, of Rotterdam. And I'd like to note that there are solutions, that there are some very good solutions. For example, the very good solution was the solution of Japan to introduce a number of architectural competitions. And many students participated in these competitions, and they became the future generation of architects that was rebuilding Japan the way we know it. At the same time, there are lots of examples of bad solutions. There's a reason why Rotterdam is mentioned here. On one hand, this is a very successful case of rebuilding. On the other hand, they made a mistake where they built cheap housing that became ghettos later. And it took them decades to resolve this problem that they created themselves during the reconstruction. So the key problem, as we study cases of Cover, Dresden, and others, there is one big common problem, common for all of them. There was a problem then, and there is a problem still now. This is the fact that the conflict between short-term vision and problems. We're building modular houses, for example, and we know how many problems this solution has, but it's very necessary for now. So there's a conflict between short-term vision and long-term perspectives. And long-term perspectives is something Anna was mentioning today, Anna Curie, the rethinking and the search for identity of the city, rebuilding the city, quality housing with bomb shelters, waste processing, preservation of forests. So we know that some communities are planning to cut forests to build this new housing for the IDPs, for temporary housing, which is probably not the best solution in the long-term perspective. Replacement and modernization of engineering communications, building factories, industrial parks, modern solutions. And mayors of Ukrainian cities, their amalgamated communities in this war have demonstrated their heroism, and we are very grateful for this. And I want to believe, just like all Ukrainians, that you have ambitions, not just to solve this problem now and survive now, but make history with cases similar to Bilbao. This is a very important case where an absolutely lost town was rebuilt into a city that hosts 2.5 million visitors per year. And our professional community, our builders and architects would like to see our cities mentioned in the future, like Coventry is mentioned, like Warsaw is mentioned, like many other cities are mentioned as good cases. I'd like to remind you about other ruined cities. Here are our IDPs that are deprived of their own housing, that had to move away from their houses. And in reality, what are the tools available for this? Since we're talking about long-term perspectives and resolving long-term problems, in reality, these are thousands of projects that can be introduced within one town. This is a huge amount, this huge scope of challenge, and our cities have not faced this before. This is a relevant tool that could help prepare the Ukrainian infrastructure of local authorities so that we could handle such a challenge. And this tool is called Project Management Office. This is the tool for development of communities and cities. And I'd like to quote several successful cases. The cases of Dublin, Ingolstadt, New York, Dubai. Interestingly, I think you've seen their World Expo. Many have seen their World Expo, and Dubai has received the first place, the top place of design project in the world for successful construction of available facilities.
Speaking about Ukraine, Ukraine has things to be proud of. Let's mention Kryvyi Rih here. We had a mayor of Kryvyi Rih speaking here. He didn't mention that, but we have project management office in Kryvyi Rih as it should be. To some extent, we had a similar model office, project management office in Mariupol. Treasury of the US does have project management office. Ministry of Defense has it too, and we have the results of their work, and the result is just the way we defend our country against Russia. Just because the project management principles have been used by the Ministry of Defense. So that's the tool that we have in hands. And what we would like to have is we want this initiative to be available to Ukrainian cities. So what we would suggest is establishing project management offices in your respective towns. So here is this list of challenges that we all face today. We all know them. That includes inability to use funds that were allocated and available to communities as a result of decentralization. That's an effective tool. It is there. The structure of PMO, Project Management Office, looks like that. First, that's the municipal office that is established within the local authorities. That's the office that coordinates and provides standards for the projects that are implemented in the villages and towns of territorial community. In these offices of project management, there are also IT centers that use Microsoft company tools. That was the news that was announced in Davos. They are going to mentor the digital transformation in Ukraine. So this information center, and that's very important, is going to accumulate all the information on the project budgets and develop reports in real time, whether that's the entire portfolio or the particular project implementation. So this type of transparency and accountability that is offered by this office, that's exactly what donors and foundations need, because they are going to invest their funds into this. So transparency and this quality of work is needed most by people of the communities and our communities. Project management offices that are going to be offered as pilot offices will be established, from our perspective, should be established in those who were destroyed largely, and in those cities that host a large number of IDPs. Since these require adapting or tailoring lots of projects that are currently implemented in the second group of cities. In fact, in Ukraine, we have dozens of experts on project management, certified experts, certified under different methodologies. Lyudmila Nefedova established project management office at the Ministry of Defense. We have the team that set up this office in Kryvyi Rih. They managed to implement it within one city. That's a success story. here, and you can study the experience, and you can use this group of experts in your respective towns. As the organization, we are open for a partnership. We are searching for pilot cities where we can establish the PMO that will be able to resolve short-term and long-term tasks and bring the project management to the level of the best world practices. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm sure we'll be able to revive and restore modern Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. That was the second session that we have completed. Now we move over to closing remarks on cooperation to revive Ukraine. We have remarkable speakers here from the European partners. We have Andreas Kiefer. He is one of the most experienced experts in local self-government, who was elected Secretary General of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities in 2010. And today, jointly with the Association of Ukrainian Cities, he is with us every day on any issue that we are facing, and he is resolving all of them together with us. Thanks a lot for that. Over to you, Andreas.
This one, this seems to work now. I think this is green now. No? It's green, yes. So I think. Yes. Now we try this one. This sounds better. Good. Good afternoon, and let me first thank our host, Vitali Klitschko. Vielen Dank für die Einladung. Alexander Sloboshan, the Association of Ukrainian Cities. This is the right moment to think about the future and to think about what is going to happen afterwards. And the speakers that we have heard were impressive and necessary, shedding light from different angles to the situation and showing ways. And there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Different regions, urban areas, rural areas need different approaches. But most of it needs committed people. And we have seen impressive statements from our friends. And I would like to thank Halina Minayeva. I visited her town in better times. Alexander Sienkiewicz, who has a Congress history and where I had the pleasure to walk across the square from his mayoral office to the office of Anna, the chair of the regional council, where this building today is a ruin. It was attacked by the Russian forces because it is a symbol of self-government, of regional self-government. And this is what we must not forget, that it is, as it was said by Vitali, by others today, a war against values. And this is what unites us. And to rebuild a modern Ukraine needs solidarity and help. Different actors can contribute to different objectives in this. And this conference today, partly being here, and one of the important things of conferences are the coffee breaks and lunch breaks. This is where you learn more, where you don't get the information and the vibes when you talk online, when you present something to a screen. This is what makes it so different, and this is what Len Verbeek, the president of the Congress, and myself made us decide, yes, we will accept the invitation from Vitali Klitschko and come. We have heard a lot today about the proximity of the mayors and councillors to the citizens and to the actual situation. And we have heard a lot about the ownership that these mayors and councillors have taken and responsibility for the people that they represent. They have taken decisions in situations where there was no time to ask other levels. And they have taken decisions in order to save their people and to make the best out of the bad situations. And we in the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities have always approached a multi-dimensional view. One was political solidarity, which is necessary. And Mr. Verbeek mentioned that the Congress had held an extraordinary meeting of its bureau on the 28th of February. This was the Monday after this 24th of February, calling for an end of the war. We called it a war from the very beginning and asked also for the expulsion of the Russian Federation from the Council of Europe, which happened a couple of days later. So from the very beginning, in this war, we were on your side, and we were, in 2014, the first Council of Europe institution that condemned the annexation of Crimea. I remember having been in Crimea in 2008, 2009, experiencing it as a typically Ukrainian region with a Ukrainian identity. And therefore, for us, this was never a question whether Crimea was Ukrainian or not. So we have this political act of solidarity. And I fully support what Alexander Sienkiewicz said. We must keep the attention of Europe, of the international community on what is happening here, also for the future, and show that this is not a completely destroyed country where it is not worth investing money, emotion, contacts, and time. This is a country that is in difficulty and that is very much able to help itself, but it needs support and help from the outside. And therefore, together with the Secretaries General of the European Associations of Local and Regional Authorities, one of them, Fabrizio Rossi from the CMR, who was with us today, the Assembly of European Regions, and many others, networks that exist where also Ukrainian cities and regions participate. Eurocities was mentioned today. The Conference of Peripheral and Maritime Regions, where Odessa Oblast has been active for many, many years. These are fora that bring together this attention and the help. We have seen a very impressive appearance of President Zelensky in national parliaments. And I think one element of getting attention and address actors at the local level in European cities, towns, and regions is that mayors and councillors from Ukrainian cities and oblasts speak in city councils of other European cities, speak in regional parliaments and regional assemblies, and tell the stories that we have heard today with the analysis of a dire situation and with the optimism and the spirit that also was very moving today to see these people believe in their country, in their cities, in their people, that this message is also carried out over the next couple of months in order to keep the attention of the European and the international public to the situation in Ukraine and to the needs for rebuilding Ukraine. And we have seen today from your ambassador in Japan that the whole world knows what's going on here. And it is America, it's Canada, USA, Canada, and many other countries who are also sending help and political support. Yesterday, when we were in Helm, we saw a big group of Canadian paramedics preparing to come here. This is the humanitarian side. This is not where we are the specialists, but in helping cities, helping municipalities, helping oblasts in performing their duties in the interest of helping the people is something crucial and where we will also act. We will continue to facilitate this exchange of experiences and also remind the national authorities, the government, the parliament, that when it comes to further reforms which are necessary, and when it comes to legislation to bring back laws back to the civilian post-war situation, that the European Charter of Local Self-Government is the guiding benchmark. The European Charter of Local Self-Government is something that Ukraine has committed to and has always oriented its reform processes on. Sometimes a bit closer, sometimes a little bit more different, but that's distant. But that is the task of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities in its monitoring activities, to bring the mirror and say, this law is not in line with the spirit and the letter of the European Charter of Local Self-Government. Even if your intentions may be good, this is the benchmark that you have to follow. Please find other solutions. And we discuss with the parliament, with the government, and the president of the Congress will have a meeting with Minister Chernyshov tomorrow, with Mr. Klochko tomorrow, to convey this message that we want to support Ukraine on this reform way for democracy that has been very successful. And as it was said today, also by Professor Milbrat, a signature reform for Europe that created a new Ukraine. One word about what do we do if we get attention? Well, we have provided the tool Cities for Cities, a platform sponsored by the city of Sindelfingen under the responsibility of Bernd Föhringer, who regrets not to be able to be here for health reasons. A city that said, we hear from many sides that action is needed, but nobody knows how to. Is it useful that everybody jumps in his lorries, loads on goods, brings them to the border and see, well, what's happening now? So we are trying to channel that. And this platform, with more than 160 participating municipalities now, has already achieved a lot. Tomorrow, when we go to Fastiv, to Sitomir, we will see also some of these examples. And for the future, this can be the platform when councillors and mayors speak in other European councils, is offered as the tool because it goes directly from one city to a different city without an intermediate loss. This is what we can do, bringing the actors together and to complement the political support, the solidarity that we show with concrete action, which complements many of the activities that take place between sister cities. City twinning has been an enormously positive aspect in this. And here we are discussing also with the Association of Ukrainian Cities, how can we document this spontaneous help and make it more sustainable? Right now, they are willing to help now, but we must keep in mind these contacts for future activities that in the long run, in the rebuilding of Ukraine, these existing links are not just a bonfire that burns now and is gone, but that we know what is happening. And I talked to the representative of the Austria here today, telling her that I've seen on Facebook a mayor that I know from a neighboring village was here in Ukraine with 3 lorries full of goods in a city. And they said, well, we don't know about that. And this is something we have to try to pool, to find, and to make use of all this positive energy also for the rebuilding process and not just for the immediate relief process now. So this maintaining attention, creating this feeling, yes, Ukraine wants to help itself, Ukraine can help itself and needs our help. This can be the framework from different sides to contribute. We are very much convinced that the revival of Ukraine will begin with rebuilding local democracy. And it is true that the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities is contributing to a part of the infrastructure that is invisible, democratic infrastructure. And it is invisible, and that has a disadvantage. You only notice it when it's not there anymore. So we have to make sure that this invisible infrastructure, which we are now missing, is coming back. And this is where we as Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, as an institution, can contribute in the dialogue with the AOC, with the other associations of the Hromadas, of the Rayons and the Oblast, to see what is needed, what is best, and to remind in all these reforms of what the European Charter of Local Self-Government stands for. And for me, this meeting today was also an impressive demonstration that the Ukrainian cities, the Association of Ukrainian Cities, have not only not looked for friends when they were in need, they have had the friends when they were in need. That means they have built up an international network of reputation, of contacts, which they established in good times, on which they can build now in difficult times. For us in the Congress, we will remain one of these reliable partners, one of these long-standing friends from good times, but now also in the difficult times with a good perspective for a future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Andres. Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
We have another speaker. That's the person who is going to summarize this session on cooperation. We do appreciate the efforts and the assistance of the Congress and of local and regional authorities. And I would like the founder and the head of the board of the Institute of the City Development, the founder of the utility company Institute of the City, head of the community that was elected, the head of the community in 2006, that's Mayor of Lviv, Sadovy. Mr. Sadovy, if you're with us, over to you.
Should have been here. Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you here today as the city chief of Lviv and as chief of chambers of our Congress. I think question number one for all of the local self-government of Europe is so that Ukraine received the status of EU membership candidate in June. Then there will be more opportunities for the rebuilding and reconstruction of our cities. I'd like to address all chiefs of all associations of all cities of Europe so that you could activate your work, your efforts, and your parliament so that this could happen. And this will be a blow that will deal a blow to the Russian aggressor and that will demonstrate that Ukraine is part of beautiful Europe. And if we speak about Lviv, over these 99 days, Lviv has hosted 5 million people who went through our cities. 2 million people lived here for a certain time. 200,000 people lived for more than 1 month. And there's 150,000 IDPs living in Lviv. We're the biggest hub in Europe today, hosting so many people escaping the bombardments to seek shelter in Lviv. Lviv was attacked, our people were killed, and as of today, we have to be 2 steps ahead. While proposing the rules of construction that we adopted in Kiev and with many other things. However, I'd like to elaborate on a few things. Lviv has set a goal to build one of the biggest rehabilitation centers in Europe. We expect that 150,000 people will need a rehabilitation. There are lots of wounded, and we receive them every day in Lviv. One message I would like to hear very seriously is that we need partnership between cities and cities. I'd like to give one slide and post it onto the screen. We are developing this together with the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, and we are helping the Ukrainian communities already to find partners in other European cities, in the European Union. And it's important to start this wave going because with all the good ideas, we need to formulate this properly. And cities of Europe could be a great help and great advisors to implement this. I wish you all good spirits today. I'd like to thank all participants who came to our country, all those who are listening to us today. I'd like to emphasize once again that question number one is to make sure that Ukraine receives the status of EU membership candidate in June. Then our work will be done well, and we will be able to help lots of Ukrainians. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.